thank you for coming to tonight's webinar on CV success. And our presenter tonight is Caryn Stivelman. Since 2018, she has been Penn Vet's career counselor, working with first through fourth year students in all stages of their career exploration, including resume reviews, cover letter critiques, mock interviews, scholarship applications, and career coaching. She is an accomplished program administrator, recognized for developing and evaluating student performance, career development, and success. Prior to Penn Vet, she worked at Penn Dental for 15 plus years as the Director of Academic Affairs. She holds 2 master's degrees in bioethics and higher education administration and a bachelor's in English, all from the University of Pennsylvania. When she's not working, you can find her enjoying time with her family, and she recently started curling at the Philadelphia Curling Club. Caryn has the compassion and motivation to see students succeed, which is why she is here today to present her workshop on CVs and resumes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Together, we are going to enter the world of resumes and CVs. So we're going to cover also tips and strategies for highlighting, oops, I see people coming in still, so I'm passing that on to you, Amanda. Oops, I'm going to share my screen right now and get this up right away. Oops. Give me a thumbs up if everyone can see that. Yeah, all right. Well, we are going to cover tips and strategies for highlighting your strengths within your materials and then matching it also to the job description, which is really important. You can't just have one resume and one cover letter for all of your applications. So I want you to consider this presentation as a conversation amongst us, and I'd love to see you take part in it. So when I ask, I would love for you to unmute yourselves and participate. I run this very informally, but I do want to hear from you and what your thoughts are on some of these applications and examples that I give. So your resume, your advertisement, this is really your chance to shine. And it's not the time to be humble about what you bring to the table. Did you know that employers spend only 6 to 10 seconds at first reviewing a candidate's material before determining if they go to the yes or no pile? I'm sure most of you want to end up in the yay pile. So it's important you organize your information efficiently and also, most importantly, show the relevancy of your experiences to the job. And that's really what my presentation is going to really concentrate on. So a resume, as well as a CV, is exactly what I said. It is an advertisement of your qualifications and strengths. But a CV is used mostly in the academia and research realms with a length of 3 or more pages. It really dives deep into research and postdocing, also conferences you've attended, publications, oral and poster presentations. But a resume is a snapshot to highlight skills to an employer through a group of responsibilities and accomplishments listed. And that's usually 1 to 2 pages. Now, one thing I have to tell you, if you jam-pack your resume with every single detail, that's going to reduce the chance that the employer's eye is going to land on what you want them to see. Think about what you want to advertise. What's relevant? Do you want to advertise your research? Maybe, obviously, your dental experience. Maybe you want to show off the community or the volunteering. Collaborations with clubs, leadership, even study abroad has a place on a resume. And given the majority of your resume is real estate, make sure that goes to the most recent and relevant information. So I usually don't have any rules, but I do want to say that you want to make sure that you use your spell check. You want to make sure that it's well organized with the formatting, it's consistent. All of the dates are on one side, or all of the dates look bold, or all of the facilities are bold while the positions are italicized. However you want to do that. Delete the redundant words. Do not allow for paragraphs to explain your responsibilities. Rather, we're looking at bullets, and you see the bullets right on my screen right here. And also, So verb choice for me is very important because it's going to show that you take an active versus a passive role in your experiences. So I ask you to think about, are you a doer or are you a helper? So to do this, think about this. Keep your descriptions concise and nice and tight. So by that, I mean, instead of assistant dentist with hygiene instructions for clients, it's not about assisting the dentist. Find a more powerful action verb. So place that information with the dentist at the end of the bullet. Here's an example. Try educated clients about hygiene instruction alongside dentist or in collaboration with dentist. And think about what you do. Do you administer anesthesia? Do you monitor it? Do you develop? Do you diagnose? Think of those words. And here's a few others on my screen here. So I want you to think about the verbs that you use. I think most of you have a more active role than a passive role in a dental clinic. So really come across with those action verbs. Now, I'm not one for sticking to rules. Like I say, I have guidelines. So just think about those guidelines. And now we're going to move on to talking about the look of it, the format, the feel. Again, use bullet points, not long lines of descriptive text. And remember, put yourself in the place of a human resume reviewer because they are likely reading dozens and dozens of resumes at a time. They're not going to read your book. Now, if you justify dates, you could justify dates or locations or both. It just gives a resume a very clean and easy look to see the dates and the history. Again, always most recent to least recent in all of your sections. And prioritize the information. So if you're a barista or you have dental experience and you're going for a dental job, make sure that that dental experience will show off on the first page. If you played sports in undergrad or even graduate, make sure that you keep that in because it shows that you're a team player. So some of the things that you may not think are relevant, in my eyes, as a reviewer of resumes, I'm going to say that is relevant because it's also showing off in between your soft skills. If you did research, it takes a totally different set of skills along with critical thinking and collaborating with your team. So make sure to put some research in there if there may be some research in your internship or externship. And when I ask about quantifying information, I ask you, how many students did you tutor? How often did you volunteer? And how much money did you raise? I want to talk about creating a resume header now. So we're going to either build or in this instance, update your resume or CV to make sure that it is refreshed. So having the right header, the layout, and the relevant information, these are all steps to ensure that the hiring manager reads your materials. If you do not have, I put in LinkedIn here, if you don't have an updated LinkedIn account, do not include it, okay? But a lot of the time also nowadays, individuals are only including for the address, the city, and the state, along with one email and one phone number. Let's get really into a header and feel free to unmute yourself to let me know what you like or don't like about this header. No answer is silly. Anybody like this? Does this look like a lot of your headers? Anyone? Well, I'm going to push this along here. We want to delete the redundant words like email or phone. I don't think that's necessary. Okay? The zip code is also not necessary. And I would rather you choose one email or phone number to include on the resume. One thing this person did do was make their name a little larger, and I definitely push making your header, your name, larger. So this is what it looks like. These are some ways that you can play with it. You can add some small caps in there. And you can maybe add a line or two to separate your name from the address or separate that resume header from the rest of the resume. And of course, you can be as creative as you want. But remember, the style that you choose is more of a personal preference. So think about the image that you want to project. I want to move on to objective versus a professional summary or profile. I do see a lot of students using this on their resume. Personally, I'm not a fan of either of these, but each one has its place. So if you're going to a career fair, and that way you have an objective, exactly what you're going for, that would be placed here. You know, if you're going to, you want to say I'm seeking externship or an internship, and I'll give you an example in just a moment. If you had an extensive history of employment, I absolutely tell you, put a profile in. It's a great way to highlight your value at the beginning of your document. So if you're 10 or 15 years into your career or your experience, I would absolutely put a career summary or profile. Now, both of these are placed at the top of the resume after the header. Both summarize the qualifications to give the employers a quick overview. And both are also going to depend on the experience and the job level and the position. So I do want to give you just a quick example of both of what I mean. So in the first example, you'll see that this is objective. And take note how the person highlights the position. They're looking for an internship. You can even say, you know, rising third-year student, rising fourth-year dental student seeking orthodontic externship in an academic setting. So also explain what skills you want to strengthen. Now, a profile is a different purpose whatsoever. This is going to explain the number of years experience or one or two strengths and a summary of the value and the skills you would bring to the company. Again, it's just a very different feel. So you can see energetic, goal-oriented dental student with broad experience in general dental medicine, including, and then here we go, it explains what their experience is. Gain considerable knowledge through handling, through vigorous education, externships, senior rotations, able to work well in team environment. And this is a wonderful way to showcase your soft skills or those transferable skills. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes too. The next thing, we're going to switch gears here. The resumes that are going to follow are actually real resumes provided by dental students I worked with in the past. So I have permission to use these. And anything can be enhanced to make your document really stand out to the hiring manager. So let's begin. And this is where I really, really need your help. What do you like about this? What would you change about this? And this is 25 lines of space on your resume. So can someone unmute themselves and let's get talking here. Getting into that yay pile, someone? No, we have a quiet group tonight, huh? All right. You may notice the GPA is here on all of this, and a GPA can either be on a resume or not, depending how high it is or if you happen to be ranked. So GPA, I could take it or leave it. We don't need the redundant words. Go back to the second slide that I showed you about the redundant a and the responsibilities included. And even here we have this here. We don't need high school. I talked about the dates and locations could be moved to the right or left side, depending how you wish to space it. And here come those redundant words: graduate, currently enrolled. These are the things we don't need. High school is so long ago. Let's delete that. We're going to concentrate on undergraduate. If some of you are in the PASS program from Penn Dental, you could certainly include your undergrad. We're really looking at your dental. After I reduced it by a little bit more than half the lines, giving you space to outline other important experiences. So reducing this to 12 lines, including the spacing, it has a completely different feel. It's organized. It's easy to read. Here's a side-by-side view of this, okay? And you can also list scholarships and awards, dean's list under the school as well, if you wish. If you have certifications, this is also another great place to put it. And we got rid of the high school. Here we're going to move on to do some research. Now, the next section is either going to be dental experience or research, and we're going to get research out of the way first. So if you attended conferences, gave oral or poster presentations, publications, this can all be listed under the research experience. And a question that I receive a lot about this is, well, how do I explain this? And how do I change it? So a lot of things are missing from here. First of all, we want to spell correctly. We're missing a location. We have the advisor, which is great, but we don't need assisted on. We could say reviewed implementation, developed, presented. But the other thing is, where and when did you present your findings? How? Was it oral, poster? Was it in a publication? And if a publication, you are in the midst of making a publication, you could put manuscript in progress. Other verbs that you can describe research: investigated, analyzed, assessed, reviewed, calculated. And again, this does a lot more and really elevates the language. What I want to show you is what the after looks like. Now, here we played with it a little bit more. So it has the same lines, it's the same 8 lines, but I want you to take note of how they decided to use bold to explain the facility or the clinic or the department or the school. They used italics to show off the position. Now, if you choose to do something like this, make sure every section you have your position in italics, or if you want bold, and then maybe the facilities are going to follow with being either bold or italics, but make sure it's in all sections the same way. Now, again, the research include the conferences, the presentations, the PI, or in this case, the advisor of the project. And notice also no periods at the end of the bullets. They're not sentences, but rather just a concise description. There's no paragraphs, and there's no first person. So again, here's your before and after. Same amount of lines. What we did was just elevate the information, the wording, to present a better feel for what you're doing. And instead of assisted on a research project, educated and fielded questions from families about instruction and implementation. So it does come across a little bit different. Now we're going to move on. It's not always about reducing or keeping the lineage the same. It's not about reducing it, but sometimes it's really just about the formatting and the organization of the information. So when you look at this, this is from a really bright young woman, a dental student from Penn Dental that I worked with, and she submitted this to me for critiquing. This was one of 7 pages. What do you think when you view these pages? If you want to unmute, tell me what you think about this. There has to be some sort of opinion on this one.
No space.
Yeah, everything looks really smushed together, right? Like it's one long entry or one experience, only separated by an underline. Who else has something to add? I bet you're all eating dinner right now as we're doing this, which is perfectly fine. Well, I will say everything's smushed together. I want to appreciate all the activities that this person was involved in, but definitely spacing between each experience, I think, is necessary so that you can highlight your skills. So here's a few things that I found. So this is 39 lines, and I realize the next slide you're going to see is going to be 43 lines, but I'll explain why. So here you have this repetition of pendental, right? Where if you just introduce the school and then set up your clubs and the organizations after, it'll have a whole different feel. We want to spell correctly, again, American. Notice the dates are not even in order. These are mixed up, out of order. And remember, I like most recent to least recent. And I have to admit, I don't think you're doing any rituals when your patients come into the dental chair and sit down. So I don't know if it's really necessary to explain all and every particular membership and detail of the board membership that you had. And also, this is community service at the end here that could be much separated from the rest of the leadership positions that you have. Okay, so let's move on. Let's reorganize this section. If you list the school once at the beginning of the section, and if you use, like I said before, the italics or bold or tab in to indicate the club or the affiliation, and again, descriptions, short, concise, to the point with a quick bullet, okay? And spacing, again, you pointed that out, and I can't stress that enough. That is really, really important. And again, the irrelevant words and information. So this is what we changed. So again, it may be more lines, 43, but I think it's really important to show this off. So they decided to introduce the school in bold. And as you see under leadership and community service, they did the same thing. They introduced the school. And then in italics, they decided to put all of their different positions and clubs in italics. And they did that again also under community service. And then again, that great spacing in between each of these. And be careful of the verb tenses. So if you've completed the activity, use past tense. And if you're still in the role, by all means, use the present tense verbs. I'm going to go into another section that I see a lot on dental resumes and CVs, and that's teaching. And teaching is really important because it shows off immediately the communication skills and the ability to process the information using layman's terms to another individual. So no matter what you are teaching, teaching is very important. Educating and fielding questions, being able to do that really highlights some really good soft skills without talking about your skills in the resume. So as there was a lot of teaching here at Penn Dental, you can see we can group the courses together so we don't have to keep repeating it and taking up lines, and also get rid of those redundant pieces. So I don't care that you got the job, let's say, through academic affairs. I just want to know what you taught or where you taught. So location, place, etc. So this is what it looks like. So we pretty much know what a piano teacher does. So in this instance, it wasn't really necessary to provide the description, but look how nice and easy this was and how clean it is, where it's under teaching experience. They know that there was some tutoring or teaching. And in this case, we decided not to put responsibilities and just put what you did. And what we did was bold the places And you'll see UPSDM, instead of writing out University of Penn School of Dental Medicine, it is a lot to type. If you, at the very beginning, under your education, will spell out the university's name in full with parentheses, UPSDM, you can certainly then use UPSDM for anything else that refers back to Penn Dental. So here you have that. And again, we'll just do that side-by-side view. Resumes, right? But the one thing that's really important for the resume is to really, as this says, customize, to personalize it. So by knowing how to write the value of your skills, you can write a resume that highlights how your skills fit the position you're applying for. And so if you're discussing required qualifications, well, that's something that you can't kind of meander over. You must have the license. You must have that dental degree. But the referred is a whole different ballgame. And we can get around those referred by really focusing in on what you have and what's positive, not the negative. So we're going to move to the next tip, a few tips for reading the job descriptions. So again, the most important qualifications are going to be listed. Sometimes they're listed as required versus preferred. So really pay attention to that. Keywords that they're looking for. And again, like I said, some things are set in stone, like those licensing, but others can be worked around. So I don't know how many of you watch HGTV. They used to have a show called House Hunters. I'm not sure if it's still on the air, but they would have 3 houses, and all 3 houses looked amazing, or some needed work. Some were in the price range, some were not. Some were, you know, you could just move right in. Others needed work. And what happened was there was never a house that checked all the boxes. So a job is kind of the same. You may not have a job that checks all of the boxes, hence preferred job, but highlight the skills that you do have and don't focus on what you don't. So you have your hard skills, like measurable, tangible proficiencies, like anesthesia. All of you have to check off competencies, and you have to check off requirements to get your diploma. So the technical skills will all be there. But what's going to differentiate you are the soft skills. And that's not really quantifiable. So soft skills, I have a list here, and I'm just going to read this list off, okay? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking, empathy, active listening to your patients, really listening for what the issues are, resilience, time management, creativity. Are you adaptable? Do you have emotional intelligence and leadership? So all of these are the soft skills that you can highlight so nicely in your cover letter, as well as keywords in the resume. So some of those transferable skills, multitasking, teamwork, problem solving, those are the things you want to really rely on in your cover letter, along with the technical and responsibilities and accomplishments in the resume. So basically what I'm saying is it comes as a package. So if you have managed meetings or organized meetings in your resume, maybe you want to expand that, not regurgitate it, but expand it in the cover letter. So for example, maybe you have managed meetings for the club, okay? Maybe in the cover letter, you want to discuss the successful meeting that you organized at a previous job if you're just out of college, or at discuss the club meetings you've held or the discussions that you've led. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I want to emphasize to you. So here, I want to give you 2 very different job descriptions. Some job descriptions are going to go into great length, like this one, on the qualifications and the responsibilities, and they also list some of the benefits they offer. So this is great, right? So if you really look at this and read it, prestigious dental practice is seeking an enthusiastic associate dentist to join our dynamic team, provide exceptional care to our valued patients. They go into the benefits. They also talk job responsibilities. They talk about lifelong learning. They talk about CE. And they talk about growth, both professionally and personally. So this is quite nice. So at the bottom here, I wrote, consider the job responsibilities listed, and then try to compare that to your own experiences. Again, the responsibilities in the resume, using those action verbs, and then the solid examples on how you're educating clients or why you're considered a team player with your team of dental assistants. Okay? The technical skills you have, but you need to prove those transferable skills. So if you have a passion for teaching, include the TA position, or talk to them about the additional CE and certifications that you completed. Talk about the rapport you have with patients, or the collaborations you have with your dental team, like your hygienists and your specialists. So let me go on to another. We have educate patients on oral hygiene. So talk about how you do that. Maybe you want to talk about all of those teaching experiences that you do have conveying that information. And talk about collaboration. Talk about those collaborations you have in the clubs with your team, on the sports team that you have. With maybe you were in another dental practice for the summer. Talk about that. In pediatric dentistry and orthodontics. Now, the second example actually uses half of the ad to sell their location and benefits. So there's not really much in the qualifications detail, in the qualifications. So aside from the degree and the licensing that they're talking about, which you definitely have to have, how are you going to match that? There's no getting around the requirements, but talk about your own lifelong learning in terms of continuing education, or making patient care a priority, because they do talk about their serving of their patients. And they also talk about philosophy is to providers the autonomy to do what they want, providing all the support. So that's really good, but also talk about how you provide that support, maybe as a mentee or a mentor. And when the posting provides information about providing these supports and resources, when you're in, let's say you apply and they call you in for an interview, one of the good questions you can ask is if they have a mentorship program, especially with those externships or internships. Do they have a mentorship program? And if so, how is it structured? And if a posting gives the details about the facility or the radiology that they use or the technology, then talk about your technical skills to use that equipment. Okay? Thoughts as I conclude on the resume is you're going to be seeing your resume again and again. So if it was up to me, I'd continue to ask you to ask someone else to read it for a fresh perspective. Or maybe you read it so many times you didn't realize you had a spelling error or a grammatical error, or something's not clicking for the reader. Ask for a different perspective. Make sure that you don't lie or exaggerate or embellish on your resume, because that will come forth later on. And always, always, we do a lot of, there's no snail mail anymore where you had to put it in the envelope and send off the hard copy. We're doing everything obviously by email, or even uploading to an application or a website. So make sure before you load it, make sure you save the documents as a PDF before uploading. And for Facebook, Post appropriate photos. Please take down all of the negative ones. Like you with a beer bong in your hand is really not going to cut it. They will see this. People do start to look at Facebook. They do look to see if you have a LinkedIn. They do look at your social media. So please, please keep that in mind. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are going to be applying for residencies. So I do want to take a moment to talk about a personal statement that's part of your applications when you're going for an externship, a residency, etc. So let's talk about preparing a personal statement. I'm going to brush over this a little bit. The length is usually 1 page. And the first paragraph is really that introduction to who you are and your formative experiences. So the first paragraph, you may want to just simply state who you are. I'm a 4th-year dental student who will be graduating in May 2025 or 2026 and seeking a residency at your practice. Explain a little bit more about what your career goals are. Maybe it's general practice after that, specialty practice. And it really is in everyone's best interest for you to state your goals from the onset. That way they determine whether the program of interest is a good fit and they're meeting your goals as well. If you intend to use maybe the first 5 months of the program to determine your career goals and really settle on a specialty, it is okay to state that. I think it's really important to align your values and your own admission and interests with the goals of the new program. You also want to link your experiences, as I put here, to your studies and activities. So use that next paragraph or two to really outline some unique informative experiences that really prepared you for this next step in your training. So you want to highlight experiences that'll separate you, especially those soft skills that we just talked about that we can add to a cover letter as well. Your leadership, communication. If you're doing business management, that's also going to be good for marketing. And include a statement that you recognize the demands of the residency training and that you are absolutely prepared and eager to take on and fulfill these. You want to also just organize and make sure your thoughts transition from one paragraph to another. And the last paragraph is going to be important, and be very creative about those attributes that you're going to bring to support your candidacy. So if you say, hey, I'm a hard worker and I have a charming personality, that's really going to backfire because you're not providing enough information to back up those statements. So it's beneficial to give that really, really specific example of perseverance, or maybe a unique understanding of the task, or how you establish rapport with your patients in the dental chair. So I think that really will touch upon the personal statement. Now, a lot of this also can pertain exactly to the cover letter as well. And so before we get into writing the cover letter and some tips that I have, I think we also need to understand the cover letter's purpose. And let's take a minute here to think about this. A cover letter, when you send it off with your resume, that's the first opportunity to impress the hiring manager. But it's also, on the flip side, the first opportunity to disappoint them. Because what a cover letter does, it's this window into your communication and people skills, basically your written communication skills. And so they also want to understand, and it'll come through with your personality, the way that you write the cover letter, your enthusiasm for the job. And so it's going to explain what you're going to do for the practice, not what you're going to get from them, what your needs are. So basically, it's answering what value that you are going to bring to the facility. And as I put here, in short, it's a great way to prove you've got what the organization is looking for. As simple as that. So, and now I'm going to present to you my 5 tips for a cover letter, according to me. So I ask you, which we just did, you can't just be sending out the same cover letter for each job you apply to. And if you are doing that, I have to admit that is a wrong way to proceed with a job search. You want a good cover letter personalized to each job. Now, that doesn't mean you can't reuse certain pieces in your cover letter over and over, but change each letter to match the position. Use keywords, okay? Start by including the right and relevant experience. And I think that is going to be key to you being seen. Research the facility. And this research is going to give you an idea of the practice as well as the culture of the place. It'll give you updated, maybe they'll have who you're working with or the types of clients that you see or the specialties that they do or the CE that they give, the mentorship program that they have. So really research the facility, see what their competitors are, what they're doing in social media, if they're doing any community service. This is pretty important stuff. So research the facility so that they understand and you understand that your values will align. Now, this next one can be very tricky. I feel like you should always make every attempt to address your cover letter to the actual hiring manager. Now, sometimes that could be their human resources department or a practice manager or a hospital administrator. To whom it may concern, when you start writing that out, that to me is a big disqualifier, because for me, it shows, oh, this person didn't take the time to research. And it's also the same with dear sir or madam, that first one up there. That's a hard pass for me. So if you don't know who the person is to address the letter, you may want to just simply check the company website. That's part of your research, and reach out to human resources for the name. You can ask, hi, I'm applying for the dental technician or the dentist, the full-time dentist at your practice. Can you tell me who I should address the letter? Who is the hiring manager that I can address this properly, or the doctor or the dentist? And if you still can't find someone, then just maybe address the letter to maybe what the advertisement will state. They'll say, please send to the hiring manager or the selection committee. So that's who you'd address it to. Dear members of the selection committee, dear members of the hiring team. I have another tip, and that is not to regurgitate your resume. So when I talked about managing meetings, you want to expand on that particular wording. Manage meetings, or maybe you oversee the meetings or organize and coordinate meetings for or upcoming networking and social events. Go into a little bit more detail within your letter about how you do that. And that way, if you explain any experience you have with the dental, highlight how you grew as a professional and what skills did you strengthen or develop on that research. So think about that. Provide the details to illustrate that you're going to be the right person for the job. And let me give you another example of this. Is one piece. I am highly sensitive when interacting with patients, and my organizational and record-keeping skills are exemplary. Above all, I have a wide range of experience and expertise, and it would be my pleasure to share my dedication and professionalism with the patients of the Pearly White Dental Clinic. So I would love more detail about the interaction with these clients that you talk about in here. You say that you're sensitive interacting. I think I want more. Give me more. Add a bit of personality to the letter. Provide these illustrations of your own abilities that's going to make your cover letter unique. So again, this is more like showcasing those skills, if you will. If you work effectively with others toward shared objectives, then cite examples in your cover letter or even your interview and articulate the approach to collaborating with others, maybe listening more carefully to your patient and really understand where that anxiety is stemming from. So instead of this, I want you to try maybe this. And you don't need to have a whole entire page dedicated to your interaction with patients, just another sentence or two. I'm highly sensitive when interacting with patients as they're often nervous or worried during their visit. Patients have thanked me time and again for my knowledgeable and calm demeanor in keeping their teeth and gums healthy and clean. My organizational and record-keeping skills are exemplary, and I keep detailed, efficient, progressive notes on each patient. And so just by having that little bit, the friendliness about who you are comes through. So again, articulate your approach by explaining this in more detail. Again, I keep telling you to please, please, please proofread, because nothing's going to turn off an employer more than grammatical errors or misspelling. One of the things that I have heard from employers is that a student or a dentist has been using the same cover letter and they did not change, like they used pieces of it, but did not change who it went to. Or maybe they spelled the hiring manager's name wrong. So just double and triple check that. Please, please, please. Then I just have a couple of additional tips. You don't want the cover letter more than one page, but the resume can be 1 or 2 pages. Again, if you're going to give a CV because you're more in the research or academic realm, that could be more than 3 pages. Hiring managers are not going to read a saga, but you also don't want your cover letter 1 or 2 paragraphs. And that means to me, you're not really making this compelling case for yourself as a candidate. And if the text is too small, or in this case, too big or too small, your reader should not have to pull out a magnifying glass to read your materials. So keep it to 11 or 12 font. And again, the one thing that I have to tell you is let someone else review the letter and review the resume to make sure that it feels like a package. I don't care if it's your good-looking boyfriend, your girlfriend, or your roommate. Just let friends and family review your letter and your materials because they can provide suggestions that you may not have even considered. So, for example, does the letter sell you as the best person for the job? Does it pull the reader in with your personality? Or is it a snooze fest? That's the one thing we do not want it to be. So I want to thank you for attending. I am going to show one more screen from Amanda. Amanda has this PDA Connections. And if you are interested, I'm going to pass this along to Amanda for one moment. And then I'll stop sharing to take questions.
Thank you, Caryn. So we have a program where you can get matched with a mentor based on practice type, practice location, and specialty. So if you are interested in a mentor, a bunch of dental students are involved in this program. It's padental.org/connections. It's a great program, so please take advantage of it. It is free to you. And then I'm also going to be sending out a post-event survey. If you complete the survey, you will get an Amazon gift card. So keep an eye out for that probably tomorrow or the next day. And Caryn, back to you.
Okay, I am here now for the next 10, 15 minutes to answer your questions. If you feel that something hasn't come up, or I glazed over or just glossed over really quickly any pieces of the resume or the cover letter, let me know and we'll go into a little bit more detail. If you are shy and you want to put your questions into the chat, we can also do that as well.
Hi, I had a
Hey.
question. So if, for example, we had some leadership positions like in like graduate assemblies in the university and these kind of things, where should we place them in the resume that like outshines, like, because there were like some really high positions, and where do you think it should be in the resume or CV?
So it again, I always hate to answer a question with it depends, but I'm going to explain why. So obviously you'll have your resume header. If you are doing something in or using an objective or a profile, that would be next. If you decide you're not doing that, go right into your education and certifications, scholarships, awards. And then after that, if it is obviously a dental position, you definitely want to highlight the dental experiences that you've had. After that, you're going to want to have a section, and you can title it Leadership and Professional Affiliations. Now, if you really wish to showcase the leadership before the dental experiences, that's okay too. It would just follow education. And also, it will depend on where it ends up, the spacing on the resume. So if, let's say, you're doing a 2-page resume and the leadership cuts off in the middle and it goes onto the second page, make sure that you repeat the section header on the top of the second page so that they know it's a continuation of the leadership. And then you could follow that with dental experience. Or research. If research is really important, research would go higher on the resume. But definitely add in that leadership section. There's a number of ways you can even name the section. Leadership and membership, professional memberships, extracurricular activities, professional affiliations.
Thank you so
Does
much.
that answer? Does that
Yeah,
answer the question?
I was like aiming at for like later of like applying for residencies and these kind of things. That's
Okay.
what I asked. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Show off that leadership right after education then. Great question. Other questions? I'm happy to answer them.
I have a question about, I've heard before people say sometimes they suggest putting like a photo on a resume. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's a personal opinion. I don't usually put a resume, a photo on a resume. I like to keep it nice and clean and let them judge me not on whether I'm a female or a male or anything in between. It doesn't matter. I don't need a photo. I want them to see you for what your attributes are. I don't want to know anything else, just the attributes.
Thank you. And then I have another question about, I guess, listing. I've had someone talk about how they listed, like, I've done so many crowns, I've done so many endo, and things like that. Would you suggest putting in actual numbers, or like, I think that I did this many and the requirements were this, to maybe highlight if they've done extra beyond the
So,
requirements?
yeah, I understand what you're saying, Abby, and I don't usually put that in a resume, but you could do one of two things. If you're really highlighting this and you feel that that is extremely important to the job of the position and you really want to showcase that, I have no issue with you putting that in. But what I would do is fold it into and under education. So under education, you'll have obviously the school location, your graduating year, and your degree. While you'll also put under there maybe scholarships and awards, you can put a bullet for exceeded requirements for, and then you can explain the number of crowns or whatnot there. Another place you can put it is to expand on your education within the cover letter. So on that realm, you can talk about, you're soon to graduate whatever university you're from or school that you are from. And with that, you've exceeded the requirements, which is this for doing crowns, and you've done this many, and you can add your numbers and the quantification into the cover letter. It's not regurgitating your resume. You could put it on the resume or in the cover letter. You can
Thank
also
you.
highlight that in an interview too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because that's going to show your competency and your confidence in doing that. Another good question. Other questions? No question is silly.
And I also have one more question about the memberships that you mentioned. Where do
Yeah.
you think we should put them? You mentioned that under like education or something?
Scholarships would go under education along with awards. I would put memberships. So what is the membership? Give me an example of the membership you have.
For example, like AAE, like American Association for Endodontics and these kind of things.
Okay, so what I would do then is put down leadership and professional memberships or leadership and professional affiliations. Now, remember how I put up the slide with the school first and put that in bold? And then underneath there, I listed the leadership position and the club. In bold, you can put the association. Underneath that, member, president, or whatever your position is there. In italics, maybe.
Thank
But I
you.
want to show that off separately and not just under a school. So if this is a national organization, which it is, you want that separated from the school itself.
Thank you.
Other questions now?
I have a question. So I've tried to put my resume on one page. I've really condensed it, and I had a personal profile that I really liked back then, and it used to be like a column on the left-hand side, and
Okay.
all the rest of information would be on the right side and with bullets and everything. So I'm not quite sure if that would be professional enough to look for a job. Should I get rid of that left column that is there and put it like a different topic, personal profile in the beginning? Because if I do that, it goes to more than one page.
Yeah.
It goes like 1.5 pages, and then I'm like, should I fill it so it look like 2 pages? And I don't know. What do you suggest?
So I don't like empty space, and I don't mean to quote Taylor Swift, but empty space. I would try to fill it, but not embellish or just add stuff just for the sake of adding. If you're going over by like 1 or 2 lines, that's where you can play with the spacing. So if you have spacing of 12 and the font size is 12 or 11, in between each of those hard returns, that's where you could play with the spacing. Inch it down to maybe like 8 point. Nobody's going to notice the difference, I promise you. So put all of this, that hard empty spacing in between to highlight the positions. That's where you just shrink that spacing just a little. And to the naked eye, nobody's going to notice. If you can add some spacing in, and maybe the margins could be 1 inch instead of maybe 0.75 or maybe 0.5. Maybe you have some tight margins there. You can always increase the length of what the resume looks like. Now, if you're telling me you said you had a column.
Yes, it was.
Explain this again. Was the column dates, or was the column like you had like a color block?
It was a
resume?
color block, but
Ah,
in that color block, that would be personal profile, and I'd put what I'm capable of. It was like bullet points. For example, endodontics or implant surgeries or prosthodontics or ability to concentrate under stress and work for long hours, like team player, stuff like that.
okay. I normally don't put a list of skills. So you're probably, if I'm not mistaken, the way that I'm thinking of this, just give me a minute because I'm going to get a piece of paper here and I'm going to draw this as what I think you're talking about. So you have a resume with your name and your header, and then it's sort of divided like this. Can anybody see that?
Yes, that is correct.
Ah, so the problem with a lot of these types of templates is that if you go to expand the template, it's not quite the same template on the second page. So I would be very careful about the templates. I think it's okay to go on to a second page. Absolutely. And if you wanted to add a bench skill set, administer and monitor anesthesia, establishes report. But if you want to list those as another area, absolutely you can add that to the resume to increase the length of the resume. I'd be very careful with the blocking.
Okay, thank you.
Because when you go to add your next experience, sometimes the formatting can be a little wonky there.
If I had to add one more paragraph, for example, I have to change completely the format of it. I have to.
Yep. That's the problem that I run into when you do a formatted resume. So a lot of the time, here's a resume here of a student that I'm working with right now. And I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
This one needs a lot of spacing in between.
I see.
But he does go to the other side. And we're going to work with her on really making sure that the highlighted aspects are there. And when it happens that when you block it like that, that's tricky. It's very tricky. I would get rid of that blocking and just put the line straight across. And it's easier to read. If you want to create some sort of column for your dates, put the dates on the right or the left-hand side to create those dates and the separation of each of those.
Okay, thank you. And what did you think about putting professional skills or personal skills in the resume?
Well, I don't do that because I like to highlight that with stories in the cover letter. It is more than okay for you to add a skills section.
Okay.
So feel free to do that. Highlight a few different, communication, add the bench skills. If you have research skills, add that in there. If you have, dental, put down, if that's a great area, Abby, you had mentioned about, numbers, you could put the numbers in there on that skills section. You can add that in there. That's another way to showcase that. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody that you talk to will have a differing opinion on whether or not skills should be in there. And it's one of those with the profile as well, or the objective. You can, or you don't have to. And also play with the spacing, because maybe you want to showcase your skill set in maybe 3 different columns as well.
Well,
Your
thank you
bench
very.
skills, professional, and your technical skill. You could do the technical versus the professional skills and maybe have 2 sections.
Okay. Well, thank you very
That
much.
help?
Appreciate it. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Piece of advice. I've seen this on so many, I work with veterinary students, and I see this a lot also with dental resumes, is that they'll have this one section titled experience. make sure that you specify whether it's dental experience, community service, specify those sections. And also, if you have additional employment, don't put all of the experiences under one heading. So separate out the dental experiences from maybe additional employment. Maybe you were a marketeer, or maybe you were in business before you started into dental school, for example, and you have some additional employment. You were a lifeguard, a barista, like I said. Separate that into additional employment. Questions? Happy to stay on.
I'm sorry, but I want to ask another question.
Sure.
Do you think it's okay to have like two columns like in the resume, like a right and a and then left hand side? Or is it just to be like one main like column, like main page and write everything without any column?
I'm not a big fan of the column, but when I say column, let me rephrase that. I like justified. So when you justify dates to the right side, and remember seeing that in some of the resumes where I did justify the dates or location, it creates almost like what looks like a column. It's not really a column. I would not be doing columns. I would be just explaining the sections as is, with the dates and or locations justified to the right or the left side.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I hope everyone is able to take away 2 or 3 strategies from this presentation, whether it's on the resumes and the action verbs, or whether it's on tips from the cover letters that I gave you. For spending your evening with me.
Are there any other questions? I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and thank Caryn for putting on this amazing presentation. There will be a recording of this presentation online as well. I will send that to you guys in the post event email. So again, just keep an eye out for that tomorrow or the next day likely. And if there are no further questions, thank you all again for coming, and thank you, Caryn, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you everyone for taking time out for this. Have a great night and good luck with your resume writing.
Have a good night.